Mary. Mary, would you read the governor's remote participation policy, please?
Yes. This open meeting on February 16th of the Town Area Plan Work Group, a subcommittee of the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission, is convening by video conference pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. This meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you, and take care not to share your device's screen. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please silence all phones and devices. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment if there are any members of the public present who wish to offer a comment. Henry, would you go ahead with the roll call?
Yes. Mary.
Here.
Allison.
Here.
Lee.
Aye, here. Aye.
Mickey.
Here.
Marcia.
Here.
Mary Ann.
Here.
And I don't see Reagan. So we do have a quorum. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Any changes? Any comments? I take that as a no. Mary. We'll do roll call vote on everything.
So I'll move approval of the agenda.
Yes. That's a yes.
Yeah.
Allison.
Yes.
Lee.
Aye.
Mickey.
Aye.
Marcia.
Aye.
Mary Ann.
Yes.
And me. I'm also aye. All right.
Henry, who seconded?
Well, I'll say Mary proposed and you seconded. How's that?
And I seconded. Okay. No problem. It's in the notes.
All right. All right. Approval of the draft minutes from January 19th and February 6th.
I have comments on February 6th, so let's take them separately.
Okay. Let's start with January 19th. Any discussion? Okay. Motion to approve January 19th.
I'll move approval.
Mary, second.
Second.
Allison. Okay. Mary.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Mickey.
Aye.
Marcia.
Aye.
Mary Ann.
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. So we've got January 19th. All right, February 6th. Mary.
Yes, I had a couple of comments. The link that you provided on page 2, Lee, to the town area plan, that is a link that is local to your computer. And since you did include the actual image, I think we can just delete that link. It's not something that anybody else can click on.
Okay, I'll check on that.
Yeah. And then on the under item number 5, the first paragraph under new business, you mentioned a Gardner Street bypass. I'm not familiar with that term, and perhaps you just meant Gardner Street.
No, I meant that in the vernacular, that Gardner Street is the bypass for downtown. And a lot of us who don't want to get stuck in downtown traffic use that as the way around downtown. So it could just be, Mary, that it's a Britishism.
Yeah, it's a term I wasn't familiar with. I hadn't heard used. So if you want to call it a downtown bypass, that might be clearer for members of the public that aren't sure what we're talking about there.
I'll work on that.
So those are my comments on the minutes for February 6th.
Okay.
Okay. Any more discussion? All right. Motion to approve February 6th minutes as amended.
So moved.
Is there a motion? Mary? Second?
Second, Mary Ann.
Mary Ann? Okay. Mary?
Aye.
Allison,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
Marcia,
Aye.
Marianne,
Aye.
and me, and I'm also an aye. So we get that. Okay. Discussion of the 9 area components. Lee sent out his take on circulation, and I'll say right now, Mary does not agree with everything that's on there. I think that's fair. Lee, do you want to go through some of this?
Yes, I
Did everybody
could.
get it?
I'm happy to share screen if I'm allowed. Henry, share screen?
I'm changing the settings so that you can, Lee. Try it again.
Okay.
There you go.
I need to tell people that it's been a long habit of mine to write. And I've been told from time to time, Lee, why don't you just shorten it up with bullet points and so forth? And so I apologize if it's too wordy, but I've also tried to highlight what could be discussion points for our work group. So the first thing is I described the road network, and that that includes reference to the long-range transportation plan, and I think this link is the correct one. And I say that, and if you go to the appendix, it's work project by work project of all the things that could be improved. Most of these will show up in the state's transportation improvement plan, nicknamed TIP. And some of them are still years out, but they will go into the process of design, authorization, funding, and then eventually construction. And so I say that we would endorse every item of the list that is within the town area, and that they've been through the town review process. The plan does not include, the LRTP does not include a plan for congestion on Gardner Street. And so I suggest that we recommend that attention be paid to this historic and overused way. There's the word bypass again.
Yeah, I think in that context, though, it is clear what you're talking about.
Okay, we'll change the minutes to get closer to that. There are several places where the utility poles are right against the curb. There are other places where they're out against the edge of the road layout. Whether or not the poles should be moved or whether things could be buried. The term utilidor is a term of use in construction, and it means building a chamber under the street so that the different wires can coexist without touching each other. The communication wires don't necessarily want to be wrapped tight against power lines. So a utilidor would allow that to happen. It's not cheap, and it would open up the road for quite a while. Another possibility is to reroute burial down Howard Street to North Liberty Street. I don't think that this is something that we're going to decide on. I think it's something that we recommend to the town that they deal directly with Gardner Street. Henry, I'm going to stop at this point in case people have thoughts.
I do have a couple. I have had conversations with others specific to Gardner Street, so I would add the suggestion here that the curbs should remain low so that vehicles can borrow the sidewalk to facilitate two-way traffic as they currently do. And as opposed to when we're looking at some of the sidewalk reconstruction that's happening around town, curbs are being raised. And that may be appropriate in those locations, but I don't think it's appropriate in this location. So that's an issue that I would want to address with a comment.
Okay.
So could
Mary,
I,
I want to include what you're suggesting, but among us, driving on sidewalks in Massachusetts is illegal.
Understood, Lee, but
Okay.
this is part of why I wanted to meet with the transportation planner to find out, what level of feasibility some of these suggestions might have. If they're completely unfeasible, then
And we can put it in, and you on MPEDC can choose not to adopt that for the town, for the island master plan. That's now, by the way, folks, Mary's not the first person to tell me to lower curbs. She's going to grin when I tell her it's Nat Lowell that consistently says the curbs should be lowered.
well, I mean, I think, and I understand that on our group that we're not going to control the outcome of high or low, but I don't agree with the going low because I feel very unsafe walking on a sidewalk and not knowing when a car is going to come up behind me on the sidewalk also. So I believe it's my experience is it's very unsafe. It's unsafe watching people. And I think high and low is relative, and maybe one could define it better with inches above the road or some aspect. I know that the historical commission itself has worked with the details with the people going through and doing the sewer project to come to understand exactly what the curbstone material, what the detailing of it should be to try to replicate. Because right now, I mean, as of yesterday, half of my sidewalk was ripped up, which is a portion of the street that people think is Gardner, but it's Liberty Street that I front on. And so I don't know whether the wheels are going to go over the curb now and go into the soil and get stuck in there. But to me, as tight as it is, two cars can pass if they slow down. They can pass each other on the narrow streets. Well, on mine, in front on Gardner Liberty Street. But if they're going really fast and they're not pulled over tight, it's going to be tight. It's going to be tough, but that's just my 2 cents worth. It's a very unsafe feeling to walk as a pedestrian if a car is coming up behind you and you don't know it, and they're right behind you on the sidewalk with you.
Marcia, I understand what you're saying, and I agree about being able to pass if people are cautious. On reflection, though, wider vehicles such as landscapers, trailers may make that difficult. Two sedans can certainly pass. And just to lighten the mood a little bit, I did have to replace a mirror on a car because of hitting another car, just the mirrors on Gardner Street. And when I went out to the dealer to get the part, oh, said the man behind the counter, you're not the first person who's high-fived on Gardner Street. They apparently changing mirrors is fairly frequent. Okay.
Mark, I'll agree with you that defining high and low in a number of inches is a really important point of that. Because I can speak as a cyclist with curbs that are too high and your pedal comes down and actually hits the curb when you're on the asphalt. And also as a driver who has sliced tires open on sharp curbs, there's a lot to consider from many viewpoints on the height of the curb.
Oh, and also there's a recommendation, there is an experience because my typical walk downtown is down the portion of Liberty Street. I call it Liberty proper, that goes from the bank and it meets up with Gardner. And there are huge stretches on that street where the curbs are just too high. It's actually dangerous for the pedestrian to walk because if you slip, you're going to sprain your ankle or break your ankle because they're so high.
And
Too high.
I'm sorry to jump in again. This might be a topic that's best addressed as a sidewalk reconstruction policy. I mean, I look at India Street, which is another street where cars and trucks frequently are up on the sidewalk. And as a pedestrian, I use that street and it's very uneven footing, to the point where I'm sometimes worried that I will fall into the street because the sidewalk is pitched so much.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's probably a good reason or a good issue for us to examine in a little bit of detail in the area plan regarding the reconstruction of town sidewalks and curbs and what we see as some of the important issues.
Right. And I know that there is a study that Preservation Institute student did. I know she gave a presentation probably about a year and a half ago. That may or may not be of help, but they were doing a very detailed inventory to understand historical precedent and detail also. So we're betwixt and between a lot of issues.
I'm just going to add something from Roads and Right of Way. Drew Patnode, who's our DPW director, says that they're spending a lot of time in a informal study committee on the historic nature of sidewalks and how best to rebuild them. I don't, since it's informal, I don't think there are any minutes that we can point to. All I can say is that I have learned that it's being addressed. What the outcome will be, that's something in the future. What is the group's preference? I think what I'm hearing is that this paragraph should include something about studying sidewalk construction, including curbs, to be most appropriate for the combination of motorized vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians. You'll get a chance to see it. I will use track changes in the hopes that you can see the change.
So, Lee, are you suggesting that there's going to be a separate section regarding sidewalks, and that's where this will come up?
No, I'm not. I'm suggesting that DPW is working with the Nantucket Historical Commission to study the best way to deal with sidewalks, particularly what we're calling informally Upper Main Street, which has got such a variety of surfaces, several of which are historic. For example, the granite pavers.
Well, I mean, I would hope that we would, in the complete form, have a separate section so that we of ourselves would connect with the commission, with the DPW, whoever is working on it, and understand what's been done and make our recommendation. I think that that's what Mary was stating, no?
So Marcia, we're obliged to report on circulation, but I could certainly open this up into a separate paragraph.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and my concern would be if it's the DPW and the Historical Commission that is going to produce the decision on sidewalk reconstruction, those are two important viewpoints, but they are not the only important viewpoints. Pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers also should have input into, the issues that are significant for them to be considered.
So that moves it into the realm of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. But I'll put something in here that is identified separately, and I'm reasonably certain it won't be the last word, but it might be a vehicle for coming to some consensus.
Yeah. Then I would also say that while I think it's a very interesting idea to use Howard Street and Howard Court, I'm not comfortable putting it in the area plan without anybody else who is familiar with whether or not it's feasible, taking a look at it. You know, I don't like the idea of just throwing good ideas into a plan and saying this is what we recommend without doing some due diligence to find out if that idea is feasible.
I'm not sure what you're actually saying there. To what are we going to use Howard Street and Howard Court for? To route traffic down there, or utilities, or what?
Utility lines, Mickey, so as to eliminate the poles on Gardner Street.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It doesn't change traffic, but it would put poles on a different street.
Well, the poles on Gardner are certainly a problem. Just they've narrowed the sidewalk so much that it's on one side there's the huge elm trees, which you can just barely get by, and on the other side there's the utility poles.
That's an interesting thought, Mickey. If we can't spend the money to put them underground and we can't put them anywhere else, can we just move them onto the side of the street that already has the trees? Yeah.
Oh,
National Grid would object because then they'd have to start trimming the trees to prevent limb fall from cutting the power.
Can't win.
But I think it's important for us to say that this needs to be studied, and the town should not ignore it. And our recommendation is, please study it. Here's some things that could go into the study. They're not necessarily the be all and end all, but they are some ideas that have come up.
I like that approach, Lee. To list the concerns that we have as people who live near or use that corridor, and to recommend that the town address or study that issue to see what improvements can be made. I'm very happy with that being part of the area plan recommendation.
Okay, I've just written the word residents, and that's ENTS, the plural of people who live there. They should be consulted before anything, or there should be a mechanism for consultation. Okay, moving right along. The long-range transportation plan endorses a parking structure. You'll find that a little lower down, I suggest that we not endorse it. Now, my introductory paragraph says, look, the big parking issue is actually in the commercial downtown, which is what CDT stands for. And it impacts the town area because anything that is done to make it more difficult or expensive will cause drivers to seek spaces just outside. Where I live, I go up and down York Street to get to Prospect. I go right past the mill. And I keep looking at, I think it's maybe South Mill Street. In any event, it's loaded with cars. Who would want to park there? Oh, Lee, be smart. It's the closest street to town that has no parking restriction of any kind. And people are probably parking there perhaps even overnight. And that's just an example of what happens if you make it difficult in one place. People will seek out the easier places. So I do say that when the master plan is considered, both the downtown plan and our plan have to be laid side by side. And I go on to say that we should not endorse any kind of parking ban, but we might consider ways to make it more expensive. And given the pressure that a downtown parking structure would put on Union and Washington streets, I personally don't endorse a parking structure. I'm going to hand this over for discussion in just a minute. A few years ago, the Civic League organized a survey because it was getting close to some kind of paid parking scheme that the select board would endorse. That has not happened, but the survey was organized, and the upshot was that most people surveyed did not endorse a parking structure. It was a relatively unscientific survey because there was no organization of who would respond to make sure that it was a valid, what am I trying to say, survey of residents. If people chose to respond, they responded. So we don't know whether or not it's representative of the entire population, but we do know that the survey opposed it. And so, Henry, let me stop here and see if people have thoughts.
So for clarity, I just want to say this paragraph that starts out in general, the subcommittee, I would not have written that paragraph. So this is Lee's view. I don't think, I think it is premature to comment on a parking structure that doesn't exist yet and there are no plans created for one. I also think it's premature to disavow any parking ban when, again, there's no plan, there's nothing to look at. What this brings to mind for me is sort of the ban the market movement from 30 years ago, where everybody was dead set against a supermarket off of Old South Road. And then 30 years later, people are saying, geez, I wish we had another supermarket. Why didn't we do the one that was proposed off of Old South Road? I think that you have to look at the individual proposals and you have to think long-term. And I don't think that this paragraph is something that I'm prepared to say.
Thank you, Mary. Henry told me that the point of this discussion was to discuss. Mm-hmm. However, I will point out that it is in stone in the long-range transportation plan that the town endorses a parking structure. The plans for Wilkes Square were hypothetical, but nonetheless, they did include concrete references. That is to say, concrete in writing, not in a structure, but they did include formal presentations of a parking structure in something that's now to be called Harbor Place. So I would not say it's premature. That's why I included it.
Yeah, it's also outside our area. So
yeah,
again,
I know that.
if the town has a long-range transportation plan that includes it as a possibility, I think we have very little ground to stand on to say that we don't endorse something that is outside our area and already in town plans.
Well, I think what you could, put the focus on is what is already being stated, that we would try to avoid adding any more pressure on parking in our area, something like that. So whether it's a parking structure or parking ban, there's a need for this area not to have pressure for other parking, transient day parking to come into the area, something like that. Is that not right?
Yeah, I would agree with that, Marcia.
Well, as you note, Union Street is definitely within the town. In the summertime, it jams up sometimes all the way back to the intersection with Francis Street. Of course, today it was smooth sailing, but then again, it's February 16th and kind of cold and windy. Marcia, I agree with you, because I think that we may make reference to it, and we may also, I may also be more specific that it's not in our area, and this is something to be shared with the commercial downtown plan or waterfront plan. I'm writing myself a note. Okay, paid parking. I have seen almost every kind of paid parking system that could be used for individual payments. I don't know how many of you visit London, but it's something like £6 to £8 an hour at in paid parking zones. And the way it's done is you go to the machine, and you enter your smartphone number and arrange for a payment along with the number plate or license plate of a car, and your parking is good for whatever you've paid for. So no parking meters, no coins, all digital. It can be done. I think that's more too complicated than anything that we should endorse here.
So Lee, you're making a statement here. The town area plan endorses a parking system that uses smartphone and digital kiosk technology. Again,
no, I'm saying that if the town adopts the long range
I understand, but my personal feeling is that meters and kiosks are completely unacceptable for Nantucket. So again, I have an issue with this statement. I can't support this being the recommendation of the group without further discussion. I mean, I would support, if I would support a statement, you know, if the town creates a paid parking system, we endorse one that uses stickers and permits. But I would never support digital kiosk or a parking meter. It's just,
okay,
in my view, completely inappropriate for Nantucket.
Isn't it a little bit outside of our zone or our discussion to even talk about the system for a paid parking? I mean, it would happen downtown, not in our area. So do we really need to get into the discussion about how it's done?
yeah, I think striking language rather than adding more may be the way to deal with this. However, I am very intrigued by the idea of expanding the residential parking district to the entire town area, and then making it year-round. You'll find that on the next page. Let's see what happens if I'm supposed to be able to, come on, Lee, there we go. Don't lose your thoughts, Lee. That the residential parking district be expanded to the entire town area. It may be made year-round, relatively inexpensive for residents, and purchasable by non-residents, either by the day, the week, the month, or the year, at rates somewhat greater than residents would pay. Right now, the residential parking district is separately defined. It's somewhat narrower than either our boundaries or the old historic district. It is defined somewhere in the code. And it if you notice the signs, it runs from June to September. And I'm saying, let's just make it universal, inexpensive for residents, somewhat more expensive for non-residents, but doable. Use your smartphone to buy into the system. Not a kiosk, Mary, but just a little sign that explains how it's done. And then the income be used to keep Wave free forever. If it's big enough, it would need to be studied.
So I'd like to hear the group's thought on the elimination of the seasonality of the parking restriction. I would agree with Lee that expanding the district is something that, you know, we're going to have to advocate for many reasons. So without reviewing them, what do people think about a year-round parking district?
I agree with it. It used to be like February was a slow season with all the construction. There's 8 people with 8 trucks working on the house across from me. Permits would be a way to, you know, bring some money in. And right now there's no regulation from the town. Nobody comes around checking. So a yellow line doesn't mean anything.
No.
The sign that's, go ahead, Lee.
Henry, this may be a detail too far, but commercial permits could be more expensive than individual permits. I think
I would agree with that.
Up to the group within the town that established it.
Yep. I think it's definitely worth exploring.
Okay, thank you.
So if others agree, I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but we should get some input from the police department as to whether they have the capacity or interest in enforcing it. Because we can put all the rules we want up, but if they're not enforced, it's a moot point.
True.
This is Mary Ann. I would be in favor of parking stickers that are year round, but I have to say that I appreciate that they're not enforcing downtown parking in the middle of February when there are hardly any people down there, but every once in a while it's so crowded for some reason I can't figure out. But most of the time there aren't that many cars parked in the downtown area.
That's a salient observation.
Well, I
just think it's easier to have a year-round zone. If the police department wants to hire some year-round, summer specials are now called community service officers, but they want to hire a few CSOs to continue to regulate this or enforce it. The scheme should be able to pay for one or two.
Well, this is
I'm using the money to go everywhere: buses, CSOs, etc.
This is a very personal preference. I volunteer at the library on Saturday mornings. I appreciate that in the middle of February, when I have to drive down there to avoid the cold, that it's not enforced at 2 hours, and that I can do my volunteer work for as long as it lasts and not have to worry about it. But it's February, you know, yeah. I'm not competing with anybody for spaces, so I'm glad that a police officer is not giving me a ticket.
Well, those are related, but nonetheless separate issues, because you're parking in a 30-minute zone.
No, I'm parking in a 1 hour zone.
1 hour zone, okay.
Yeah.
Guess I wonder what the actual need to make it year-round is if there isn't that much pressure. I mean, I'm sure on certain streets at certain times of year, obviously around holidays and things, it gets pretty tight on India Street or the Union, the obvious places where people would be tending to park. Um, just wonder if certain areas could be treated a little bit differently.
Mickey, I think Henry's point about the year-round workers' vehicles means that there are some streets with a lot of pressure at any time. Right now, the Silver Street lot has been commandeered for the Force Main project, but that sometimes can get pretty full. The other thing, if you recall the presentation we had from WAVE, I get lost sometimes, but I think oh no, it was a Nantucket Town Association, and some of you may have been. WAVE is looking at ways to reestablish the ferry connector. They're looking for a grant to pay for the ferry connector to connect to expanded parking lots at 2 and 4 fairgrounds. And if that's the case, they're suggesting that there be more enforcement of no commercial parking downtown, particularly in the downtown Stop and Shop lot. Now that is a private lot, and that's really up to Stop and Shop to pay for enforcement.
Actually, it's not even a Stop and Shop lot. It's NIR that owns that lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to be nitpicking. I think there are 4 or 5 separate owners of the lot, and NIR is the biggest. Stop and Shop may own some of the property on which their trucks park when they deliver. But I think Marsh is corrected. That's one of the reasons why there's probably very little enforcement.
I got another question about Lee's statement about that you can pay for your parking stickers if you're not a resident.
Mickey, my heater just came on. Could you repeat that, please?
Well, I thought I heard you say that the parking sticker program is for people with homes in the area, but you were suggesting that people could buy stickers for more if they're not residents.
Yes, I did, and I think the current regulations allow for purchase. 375 6C. Under the current rules, residents may buy annual permits and short-term visitors may buy daily permits. Now, I'm just saying, let's make that easier. But ask non-residents to buy their. I use the word permit because, again, with license plate readers, you may not need a sticker on your car.
Mm-hmm.
Although with a QR code, it makes it easier to read. Again, these are details that I don't think we're going to resolve, but somebody might. And Mary's about letting Mike Burns comment on this is a valid one.
Okay, I think I was confused by the notion that the short-term visitors are obviously short-term rentals within our area. They're not people from outside the district. You have to be residing.
People in a bed and breakfast or an inn and a hotel.
Right.
And yes, they could be short-term rentals, or they could even be more than 30 days, just not eligible for a residential fee.
Right. I understand that.
Okay. The next paragraph, I think, is a given, particularly since we've heard from WAVE, that is the town association, has heard from WAVE that they are interested in expanding out-of-town parking with easy access. Gary Roberts said, we are using smaller vehicles, and therefore we anticipate a busier schedule. We anticipate on some routes, buses every 10 minutes to make up for the fact that we may not be able to pick everybody up in one bus. The smaller buses have 12 seats, 9 standing, and can carry 21 people. Okay, here's the sidewalks, and I've heard you all that this should be a separate segment and add some of the concerns about curbs and so forth.
Right, and I'm going to reiterate my opposition to statements that are not well defined. So that last sentence, this would take a home rule petition, which TAP endorses. I cannot say we endorse something that doesn't exist and is not defined. So if we wanted to suggest specifics and say this is what we recommend, that's one thing. But to just say, oh, we should do a home rule petition, and that's what we want, when we don't have any idea what would be in that home rule petition and we don't have any suggestion for it, that is not a statement that I'm willing to support. We might not like what comes out of that process. So again, if maybe we're suggesting a study of what the options are, maybe there's absolutely no chance that a home rule petition would be acceptable in this topic. I don't know, because we've already got state law to deal with. We may not have the opportunity for this. So again, I just think that statement is too much too fast.
Okay. To be legal, it would still require some form of state acceptance.
That what would require? I'm confused. What would require?
Massachusetts code forbids parking or driving on sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular piece of legislation, to be legal, would have to provide some manner of exception. Our former police chief was very, what should I say, compatible with Nantucket practice. He said, I'm not going to enforce this. My officers will not enforce it, but neither can I endorse some kind of signage that says, on this street, you may park on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But we now have a new police chief, and I haven't heard from her.
So what I would like to see is, I understand you're giving the practice, but I believe our job is to identify the issue, identify the problem, and where it's not a practice that many of us support. And why is that? I think we need to really describe what is happening to the sidewalks, to pedestrians, to safety, to car tires. What is the problem that we're addressing?
Yes. Should it be forbidden on those streets so narrow that parking entirely on the roadway would block the street? We would lose, I'm not sure of the number, but several dozens of parking places in the town. India, Hussey, Liberty, and beyond. In my area, York, there is no parking on Dover. That's way too narrow. But there is parking on the sidewalks on York and a few other streets out our way. There, Cherry, maybe.
Let me make the point. India Street is passable without parking on the curb for an average size vehicle. So, obviously the larger trucks, that's not the case. But I hesitate to lump all of these streets together because their circumstances are different.
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. And I know that even on York Street, when you come onto a street where cars are parked largely on the sidewalk, you think you must do that. So I practiced to try on York Street, where I'd often park, to see if the NERTA bus could get by me if I did not go on the sidewalk. And it was fine.
Right.
Marcia, that's very brave of you. Did you keep your rear view mirrors?
I did. I was really surprised. I was really surprised. I mean, I stood there between the car and the bus too.
Good.
You know,
So just
on York Street, excuse me, I've considered suggesting to traffic safety that we ban parking entirely on York Street because almost every house on York Street seems to have a driveway of some sort. And to park at all, I always thought that you had to, I mean, you couldn't possibly park on the street and allow cars to get by you. And maybe it's wider up at the top where you are, Marcia. But
yeah, I don't know because, well, I've not really measured, but I would certainly support that. And certainly in representing the museum, I know people just coming to the Museum of African American History cannot walk up the street with any kind of safety.
no, you can't. You have to walk into the street because the cars are parked on the sidewalk.
You do, exactly.
But that's a particularly narrow street, and there's others similar. I think Hussey Street may be similar.
Right. No,
Does
but
Gay?
India, I think that Mary's right about India Street also. I
I do
think
too.
larger trucks can make it down there, but they
Yep.
get accustomed to watching the truck in front of them go onto the sidewalk. That's what they do.
Mhm.
And they're trying to go fast. So
There's another issue on India Street, and this is just as we approach 5 o'clock. It's your moment of amusement. People have put posts and even little fake horse tethering posts. They're all encroachments onto the public way, and they themselves are illegal. But nobody's going to take that one on. Henry, I've got a lot of material both for minutes and for rewriting this. May I suggest, in light of the time, that we wrap it up. I did go down through the rest of this, and I'm going to go just a little bit more slowly. That we are aware that there are summertime jams, and I don't have a solution to the fact that Nantucketers are generally polite to pedestrians and will stop anywhere to let somebody get by. And the customer queue at the juice bar will sometimes spill out into the street. And that makes it difficult to come in from North Beach Street. But there we go.
They got better with it last summer. They now actually have someone standing because the line goes across the street over by the courthouse.
Yeah.
So there's usually someone standing on the end of the road on Easy Street, making sure that people know the line is across the way and making sure that people are not standing in the road. So it's gotten better. I like your idea of the ferry, having some sort of shuttle on Cape Cod side where you don't have to, run for the ferry and there's sort of a regular.
Chief Pittman said they had tried putting probably summer specials or CSOs on those intersections to control crossing. He said in the end, it didn't work. The jams were still just as extensive. Yes, where Old South Road comes into the Rotary. And we recognize them, but they are addressed in the long-range transportation plan. And one or two of them are at the edge of our area, but not in the area. And so there's my last paragraph. The next segment, which you have in the document I transmitted, was a predecessor to what's written here. And you can see where I'm laying out possibilities and then selecting one or two before I wrote this what I hope was a more homogeneous piece. Henry, in light of the time, I'm going to say that I'll work on minutes and this document side by side and try and get both of them out to you and the work group. In terms of open meeting law, this document has now been discussed as a public document, and I'll hook it to the back of the minutes. The amended document would only come up after it's discussed in open meeting, which would be in March.
Good. Thank you, Lee.
All right, you're welcome. I'm going to stop the share so Henry can officiate.
Very good. Any more discussion on anything? Good. I have 4:58. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll just note quickly, our next meeting is Tuesday, March 5th.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn, Marcia.
Second.
Marcia, second.
Mary, seconds.
Mary. All right. Mary.
Aye.
Allison.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Nikki.
Aye.
Marcia.
Aye.
And Mary Ann.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, folks. Thank you for your input.
Bye.
Thank you, Mary.